My name is Irving, and at 34 years old, I thought I had my life perfectly arranged. A software engineer with a comfortable home I worked hard to buy. I valued my space and independence above all else. But when I returned from a business trip to find my 7 months pregnant sister-in-law, Emma, lounging on my couch, surrounded by suitcases and boxes, my carefully constructed world crumbled. My father, using the spare key I gave him for emergencies only, had moved her in without my permission or knowledge. What followed pushed me to break family ties and cross lines I never imagined I would. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had a family member who thought your boundaries were just suggestions they could ignore at will. Let me start by giving you a clearer picture of who I am and the family dynamics that led to this explosion. I've been a software engineer for almost 12 years now, specializing in cybersecurity for a company that develops banking software. My work requires intense focus, strict deadlines, and occasional late nights when systems need monitoring. After saving for years, I purchased my home 4 years ago, a modest 3-bedroom house with a finished basement that I converted into my home office. This house represented freedom to me, a sanctuary I could control after a childhood where control was something I rarely experienced. My parents divorced when I was 12, a messy split that left emotional scars I still carry. My father, Harold, remarried when I was 15 to a woman named Diane, who tried her best to connect with me and my brother Marcus, but the damage was already done. Harold is the kind of man who believes his word is law, especially within the family. Growing up, his favorite phrase was, "My house, my rules," something I heard nearly every day until I moved out at 18. He made decisions for everyone without consultation, from what we would eat for dinner to what colleges we should apply to. Questioning him meant facing his infamous silent treatment or explosive anger, depending on his mood. Marcus, my older brother by 3 years, never developed the ability to stand up to our father. He became a people pleaser, always seeking approval and avoiding conflict at all costs. This pattern followed him into adulthood, making him easily manipulated by anyone with a strong personality, especially Harold. 3 years ago, Marcus married Emma, a kindergarten teacher from a small town about an hour away from the city where we live. Emma is 26, currently 7 months pregnant with their first child, a boy they plan to name James. While Emma and I never became particularly close, I always respected her kindness and genuine nature. Unlike many people who entered our family, she never seemed interested in playing the power games that often dominated family gatherings. Recently, Emma and Marcus had been experiencing problems. I learned through family conversations that Marcus had lost his job as an account manager at a local advertising firm, though the details were suspiciously vague. The financial strain became evident when they couldn't afford their apartment anymore. Marcus and Emma had been renting a 2-bedroom apartment downtown, but with Marcus unemployed and Emma on early maternity leave due to some pregnancy complications, their savings quickly dwindled. This is where my father decided to insert himself into the situation. About a week before the incident, I received a call from Harold. His tone was casual, as though he was merely checking in, but I recognized the pattern. He always started conversations casually, before dropping some demand disguised as a suggestion. "Irving, your brother and Emma are having a rough time right now," he began, not bothering with hello. "They need to be out of their apartment by the end of the month." "That's tough," I replied, genuinely concerned but already sensing where this was heading. "Have they found a new place?" "Well, that's why I'm calling," he continued. "Your house has those spare bedrooms you're not using. Emma needs stability right now with the baby coming. It makes perfect sense for them to stay with you until they get back on their feet." It wasn't a question or a request. It was a statement of what would happen. Classic Harold. "Dad, I'm sorry they're struggling, but that won't work for me," I said firmly. "I need my space for work, and my schedule isn't compatible with having house guests, especially not long-term ones with a baby on the way." What followed was 20 minutes of Harold trying to override my decision, questioning my priorities, suggesting I was selfish for living alone in a big house, while my brother and his pregnant wife might end up on the street. When I remained firm, he hung up on me, another classic Harold move when he didn't get his way. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, I left for a business trip to Atlanta. We were implementing a new security protocol for a major client, and as the lead engineer, I needed to be on site. The trip was intense. 12-hour days in a windowless conference room, troubleshooting issues and training their IT team. By the time I boarded my flight home, I was exhausted and looking forward to the comfort of my empty house, a hot shower, and uninterrupted sleep. The flight was delayed by 2 hours due to thunderstorms, so by the time my rideshare pulled up to my house, it was nearly 11 at night. I remember noticing an unfamiliar car in my driveway, but dismissed it as perhaps belonging to a neighbor's visitor who couldn't find parking on the street. Our neighborhood had strict regulations about street parking, and visitors often struggled to find legal spots. I rolled my suitcase up the walkway, fishing my keys from my pocket, while mentally planning to go straight to bed and unpack in the morning. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, I immediately sensed something was wrong. There was a scent in the air that didn't belong, a sweet, floral perfume that definitely wasn't mine. The living room lights were on, though I distinctly remembered turning everything off before leaving. Then I noticed a pair of women's shoes by the door, small pink slip-ons with memory foam soles. Definitely not mine. "Hello?" I called out, my exhaustion instantly replaced by alertness. Was I being robbed? Had someone broken in? But burglars don't typically take off their shoes at the door or leave lights on. I moved further into the house, and that's when I saw them, stacks of plastic storage containers lined against the wall of my living room. Women's clothes hung in my coat closet. A pregnancy pillow lay across my couch. In the kitchen, the countertop now held a blender, a toaster, and several containers of prenatal vitamins that weren't there when I left. My heart pounding, I continued through the house. The guest bedroom that I had been using for storage was completely transformed. The boxes of holiday decorations and old college textbooks that once occupied the space were pushed into a corner, replaced by a queen-sized bed with floral bedding. Maternity clothes hung in the closet. A half-assembled crib leaned against the wall. Someone had moved in while I was gone, and I had a sickening feeling I knew exactly who was behind it. I found Emma in the living room, sitting on my couch watching a reality TV show about expecting mothers. She jumped when she saw me standing in the doorway, one hand going protectively to her pregnant belly. "Irving, you scared me," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I thought you weren't coming back until tomorrow." "I live here, Emma. I can come home whenever I want," I replied, struggling to keep my tone level. "The better question is, what are you doing in my house?" Emma's face flushed. "Your dad didn't tell you? He said you agreed to let us stay here until we found a new place. He gave me the key on Tuesday and helped move some of our things." My blood began to boil. Not at Emma. She was clearly just as much a victim of manipulation as I was, but at my father's audacity. "I never agreed to that, Emma. In fact, he called me last week asking if you could stay here, and I explicitly said no." Her face fell, embarrassment and horror dawning in her expression. "Oh my God, Irving, I'm so sorry. Harold said you were completely fine with it, that you were happy to help. He said you were just too busy to help with the moving, so he offered to do it while you were away." I pulled out my phone and called my father. It went straight to voicemail, another classic Harold tactic. When he knew he'd done something wrong, he made himself unavailable until he thought the anger had passed. Next, I called Diane, my stepmother. Unlike Harold, she answered on the second ring. "Irving, is everything okay? It's nearly midnight. Did you know Dad gave Emma a key to my house and moved her in while I was on a business trip?" I asked without preamble. The long pause told me everything. "He told me you had agreed to it," she finally said, her voice small. "When I questioned whether you'd really want house guests with your work schedule, he insisted you were growing up and finally thinking about someone besides yourself." "Well, he lied," I said flatly. "I told him explicitly that Emma couldn't stay here." "Oh, Irving, I'm so sorry," Diane sighed. "I should have known. This is exactly the kind of thing he does." After hanging up, I turned back to Emma, who looked absolutely mortified. "I had no idea," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "Marcus is staying with a friend tonight because they're having a guys' night before the baby comes. I'll call him to pick me up." I felt terrible for Emma. 7 months pregnant, it was nearly midnight, and she'd just learned she'd been made an unwitting participant in my father's manipulation. "You don't have to leave right this second," I told her. "It's late, and this isn't your fault. But I need to be clear, you can't stay here long term. Where is my father? I need to speak with him." "He said he'd be back in the morning to help finish setting up the nursery," Emma replied quietly. The nursery. He was planning to convert my home office into a nursery, without asking me. This was no longer about a temporary stay. My father was orchestrating a complete takeover of my home, my space, my life, without my consent, and I knew exactly what would happen next. Once Emma and the baby were settled in, it would become heartless to ask a new mother and infant to leave. This was a calculated move, designed to force my hand. I told Emma I needed some air and stepped outside to clear my head and prepare for what would undoubtedly be a confrontation for the history books when morning came. True to his word, my father arrived at 8 the next morning. I had barely slept, spending most of the night researching tenant rights and speaking with a lawyer friend about my options. Emma had retreated to the guest room, clearly uncomfortable with the situation she'd been thrust into. I heard the key in the lock, and then my father's heavy footsteps in the entryway. He called out cheerfully, "Good morning. I brought breakfast sandwiches and that fancy coffee Emma likes." When he rounded the corner and saw me sitting at the dining table waiting for him, his step faltered momentarily before he plastered on a smile. "Irving, you're back early. Great. You can help with moving the desk out of the office to make room for the crib." The casualness of his tone, as if nothing was amiss, pushed my anger to new heights. "No, Dad. I won't be helping move anything. In fact, you and Emma need to pack up her things and leave today." Harold set down the coffee carrier and bag of sandwiches, his expression shifting from fake cheer to stern disapproval, the look he'd given me countless times throughout my childhood when I failed to fall in line with his plans. "Don't be ridiculous, Irving. Your brother and his wife need help right now. This is what family does. We support each other. Supporting each other doesn't mean breaking into someone's house and moving people in without permission," I countered. "Breaking in? I used the key you gave me," he scoffed. "A key for emergencies only, and you know it." Harold waved his hand dismissively. "This is an emergency. They had nowhere to go." "That's not true," I said. "You could have offered your own guest room, or helped them find an affordable apartment, or any number of solutions that didn't involve violating my boundaries. My house is too far from Marcus's job interviews, and Diane is using the guest room as her art studio," he said, as if these were insurmountable obstacles. "Besides, you have all this space you're not using. It's selfish to have 3 bedrooms for just one person when family members need help." The conversation was following the exact pattern I expected. My father always believed he had the right to allocate other people's resources, particularly mine. In his mind, anything I owned was essentially family property that he could distribute as he saw fit. "It doesn't matter how many bedrooms I have," I explained, trying to stay calm. "This is my house that I paid for, and I decide who lives here." Harold's face darkened. "And what about your sister-in-law? You're going to throw a pregnant woman out on the street? What kind of person does that make you?" "Emma won't be on the street. You created this situation, so you can fix it. Take her to your house, or pay for a short-term rental until they find something permanent. She needs stability. The doctor said she shouldn't be moving around too much in her condition. Do you want to be responsible if something happens to the baby?" And there it was. The emotional manipulation, the artificial crisis, the implied blame that would be mine if anything went wrong. I had seen this tactic my entire life, but this time I refused to be swayed by it. "Her condition didn't stop you from moving her here without permission," I pointed out, "and it won't stop you from helping her find appropriate accommodations now. This is appropriate. It's perfect, in fact. She'll have space. You can help out when the baby comes, and Marcus can save money to get back on his feet." The more he spoke, the clearer his plan became. This wasn't a temporary arrangement in his mind. He envisioned Emma, Marcus, and the baby living with me indefinitely while I provided free housing and childcare. "No," I said firmly. "This won't work for me. I work from home 3 days a week. I often work late hours, Sometimes I need to be on international calls at odd hours. Having a newborn in the house would make that impossible. Harold dismissed my concerns with another wave. You'll adjust. Everyone makes sacrifices for family. What sacrifices are you making in this scenario, Dad? I asked pointedly. He looked genuinely confused by the question. I'm helping coordinate everything, aren't I? I spent all day yesterday moving boxes, so I sacrificed my home, my privacy, and my work environment, while you sacrifice one day of moving boxes for a plan you created without consulting me. His face flushed with anger. You've always been selfish, Irving, always thinking about yourself first. Your brother would do this for you in a heartbeat. Maybe because Marcus has never been allowed to have boundaries, I replied. But I do, and I'm enforcing them now. You and Emma need to leave today. Take her things with you. I will not, Harold declared, crossing his arms. The decision has been made. Emma stays. It's not your decision to make. Someone has to make these decisions when others are being unreasonable. Our voices had risen to the point where Emma emerged from the guest room, looking distressed. Please stop fighting, she pleaded, one hand cradling her pregnant belly. I don't want to cause problems. I can find somewhere else to go. Harold turned to her, his voice suddenly gentle. You're not going anywhere, Emma. Irving is just being difficult. He'll come around. That was the final straw. Dad, Emma, I need you both to leave right now. Dad, give me back my key. Absolutely not, he said, jaw set stubbornly. Then I need you to take Emma's things and leave my house immediately. No, if you don't leave, I'll call the police and report you for trespassing. Harold laughed. You wouldn't dare call the cops on your own father. I pulled out my phone. Try me. His expression changed from amusement to shock as I began dialing. You can't be serious, he sputtered. This is family business. This is my property, I corrected him. And you're refusing to leave after being told to. That's trespassing. Irving, think about what you're doing, he warned, his voice low and threatening. If you do this, there's no coming back from it. I looked him directly in the eyes as I finished dialing. I know exactly what I'm doing. The phone rang twice before the 911 operator answered. 911. What's your emergency? For a split second I hesitated. Was I really going to do this? Call the police on my own father? What would this do to our family? But then I looked at his face, not shocked or hurt, but smug. He still didn't believe I would go through with it. He thought this was another game of chicken that I would lose, just like all the others throughout my childhood and early adulthood. Hello, I need to report trespassers in my home who are refusing to leave, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Are you in immediate danger? The operator asked. No, but they entered without permission and won't leave when asked. Do you know these individuals? Yes, it's my father and my sister-in-law. My father used a spare key to move her in while I was away on business, without my knowledge or consent. I've asked them to leave, and my father is refusing. As I gave the operator my address and details, I watched my father's expression transform from smug certainty to disbelief, then to burning anger. He began pacing back and forth, shooting me looks that would have terrified me as a child. You ungrateful little... He started, but stopped himself when he remembered I was on the phone with 911. You're going to regret this, Irving. Mark my words. Emma had collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. Please, stop this, she begged. This stress isn't good for the baby. I'll leave right now, just stop. I felt terrible for Emma, truly I did. But I knew if I backed down now, the pattern would never end. My father would continue to believe he had authority over my life and my home. This wasn't just about today. It was about every future interaction, every boundary, every decision I would make as an adult. Officers will be there shortly, the operator assured me. Please try to remain separated from the individuals until they arrive. Are you able to do that safely? Yes, I replied, moving toward the front door to wait outside. Thank you. My father followed me. You can't just walk away from this conversation. It's not a conversation anymore, Dad. You made your choice, and now we wait for the police. I can't believe you would do this to your own family, he hissed, his face red with anger. What will people think? Have you considered Emma's condition at all? The stress this is putting on her and the baby? You should have considered her condition before using her as a pawn in whatever game you're playing, I replied. You put her in this position, not me. Game? This isn't a game. This is about helping family in need. If that were true, you would have asked me first, respected my answer, and found another solution when I said no. This isn't about helping them. It's about controlling me. The police arrived remarkably quickly. 2 officers in a patrol car with lights but no siren. They approached cautiously, taking in the scene, me standing by the mailbox, my father pacing angrily on the front lawn, and Emma visible through the window, crying on the couch. Good morning, the older officer said. We received a call about a trespassing situation? Yes, that was me, I confirmed. I'm Irving Collins. This is my house. I gestured to the property behind me. And who are these individuals? He asked, nodding toward my father and the house where Emma Saturday. That's my father, Harold Collins. And inside is my sister-in-law, Emma Collins. My father had a spare key for emergencies only, which he used to move my sister-in-law into my house while I was away on business. I've asked them both to leave, and my father is refusing. The officers asked to see identification and proof that I owned the property. I provided my driver's license and pulled up mortgage documents on my phone. They spoke with my father separately, then with Emma, before conferring between themselves. Finally, the older officer approached me again. Mr. Collins, based on our assessment, this is indeed a trespassing situation. Your father admits he moved your sister-in-law in without explicit permission, and you, as the homeowner, have the right to determine who stays in your residence. My father interrupted, stepping forward aggressively enough that the younger officer put a hand up to stop him. I have a key, he shouted, waving it in the air. Irving gave me this key. Sir, the officer said firmly, possessing a key doesn't grant occupancy rights. If the property owner asks you to leave, and you refuse, that constitutes criminal trespassing, regardless of how you gained entry. This is ridiculous. He's my son. This is a family matter. Sir, I need you to calm down, the officer warned. But my father was beyond calming. Decades of unquestioned authority within the family had convinced him he was immune to consequences. Do you know who I am in this community? I'm on the board of the business association. I play golf with Judge Stevenson. The officers exchanged glances. The older one sighed. Mr. Collins, I'm going to ask you one more time to leave the property peacefully. Your daughter-in-law can gather her essentials, and arrangements can be made later to collect the rest of her belongings. I will not leave. This is an outrage. My son is throwing his pregnant sister-in-law onto the street, and you're helping him? No one's going on the street, Dad, I interjected. I'll pay for a hotel for Emma until you or Marcus figure something out, but she can't stay here. A hotel? With her condition? Ridiculous. She needs stability. The officer's patience was clearly wearing thin. Sir, this is your final warning. Leave the property now, or we will place you under arrest for criminal trespassing. I don't think my father believed it would happen, even then. His face registered shock when the officer reached for his handcuffs. You can't be serious, he sputtered. I'm very serious, sir. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back. What followed was surreal. My father, the man who had loomed so large in my life, who had always seemed untouchable and all-powerful within our family, was being handcuffed on my front lawn. He didn't resist physically, but the stream of threats and accusations that poured from his mouth made the officers exchange another knowing look. You're making a huge mistake, he told the officers. I know people who can make your jobs very difficult. That sounds like a threat against law enforcement officers, the younger one noted calmly. Would you like to add that charge? My father finally fell silent as they led him to the patrol car. The older officer turned to me. We'll need to take him to the station for processing. In the meantime, you might want to make arrangements for your sister-in-law. I nodded, a complex mix of emotions washing over me. Relief that my boundaries were being enforced, guilt for putting Emma through this stress, sadness that it had come to this. But underneath it all, a sense of liberation I hadn't expected. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up to my father's manipulation and won. I approached Emma, who looked absolutely devastated by what had unfolded. "I'm so sorry you got caught in the middle of this," I told her sincerely. "Let me help you get to a hotel until Marcus can figure something out." She nodded tearfully, one hand still protectively cradling her pregnant belly. "I truly had no idea he hadn't discussed this with you. He told us you were happy to help, that you suggested it even." I booked her a room at a nearby hotel with a kitchenette, paid for a week up front, and called a rideshare to take her there. As she waited for the car, she looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "What happens now? With your father, I mean?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But whatever happens, this isn't your fault. This is between him and me." As the rideshare pulled away with Emma inside, I returned to my empty house, changed the locks, and tried to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. My father had been arrested because of me. The family dynamic had been irrevocably altered. And somehow, standing in my quiet living room, I felt both lighter and heavier than I ever had before. The aftermath began almost immediately. Within an hour of my father's arrest, my phone exploded with messages and calls. Marcus, unsurprisingly, was the first and most furious. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted when I answered his call. "You had Dad arrested? For trying to help your pregnant sister-in-law?" I took a deep breath. "Marcus, he didn't have permission to move Emma into my house. I explicitly told him no when he asked last week. So what? She needed somewhere to stay. We're family. That doesn't give him or you the right to move someone into my house without my consent," I explained as calmly as I could. He refused to leave when asked. "That's trespassing." "It's Dad, with a key you gave him. How is that trespassing?" This conversation was going exactly as I expected. Marcus, forever under our father's influence, couldn't comprehend why I would enforce a boundary. The key was for emergencies only, and he knew that. Moving Emma in without my knowledge isn't an emergency, it's an invasion. Marcus scoffed. "You're being dramatic. It's not like he rented your house to strangers. It's your brother's wife and your future nephew." "That's not the point," I insisted. "The point is that both of you seem to think you can make decisions about my home without consulting me. Because you're being selfish. You have all that space just for yourself, while Emma and I are struggling." The conversation circled uselessly for another 10 minutes before Marcus hung up on me, declaring that I was dead to him until I fixed this mess by dropping charges against our father and letting Emma move in. I knew this was just the beginning of the family fallout. Less than 20 minutes after Marcus's call, I received a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret what you did to your father. Families should stick together, not stab each other in the back. Watch yourself." I recognized the writing style immediately. It was from Walter, my father's longtime friend and business partner. They had been inseparable since college and had started a real estate development company together 30 years ago. Walter had always been like a second father to me, but his loyalty to Harold was unshakable. The implied threat in his message sent a chill down my spine. I decided it was time to take additional precautions. I called a locksmith who arrived that afternoon to change all the locks, then installed a smart doorbell with a camera and motion sensor floodlights around the perimeter of the house. I wasn't taking any chances. While the locksmith was finishing up, I was surprised to see Diane's car pull into my driveway. My stepmother had always been caught in the middle of family conflicts, trying to mediate while rarely taking sides. She looked exhausted as she approached the front door. "Irving," she said softly when I greeted her, "can we talk?" I invited her in, offering her tea, which she accepted gratefully. We sat at my kitchen table, an awkward silence stretching between us until she finally spoke. "I want you to know I had no idea he was planning to move Emma in behind your back," she began. "When he told me you had agreed to it, I was surprised but thought maybe you'd had a change of heart." "You know me better than that," I replied. "I value my space too much to suddenly agree to indefinite house guests." She nodded, looking down at her tea. "I know. I should have questioned it more. But Harold can be convincing when he wants to be." That was an understatement. My father could sell sand in a desert when he put his mind to it. "The thing is, Irving," Diane continued hesitantly, "your father has always been controlling, but it's gotten worse in recent years. After Marcus lost his job, Harold became obsessed with fixing the situation. When you said no to Emma staying here, he took it as a personal challenge to change your mind. Or rather, to bypass your mind entirely. That doesn't excuse what he did. No, it doesn't, she agreed, surprising me. What he did was wrong. I've told him for years that his need to control everything would eventually cost him his relationship with you boys. I guess today was that day. She looked genuinely sad, and I felt a pang of sympathy for her. Being married to my father couldn't be easy. Harold was released about an hour ago, she informed me. He's at home, furious and plotting his next move. That's partly why I came, to warn you. He's not going to let this go, Irving. What do you mean? Diane hesitated. He's convinced that you'll come to your senses if he can just get Emma settled in here. He doesn't believe you'll maintain your position once she's living here with the baby. A cold realization washed over me. He's planning to try again, isn't he? She didn't answer directly, but her expression told me everything I needed to know. Just be careful, Irving, and maybe consider installing some security cameras. I gestured to the new doorbell camera being installed, already on it. After Diane left, I spent the rest of the day setting up my new security system, connecting the cameras to my phone, and testing the motion alerts. I also contacted my lawyer friend again, explaining the situation in more detail and asking about options for a restraining order if needed. That night, I went to bed physically and emotionally exhausted but feeling secure with my new locks and security system. At exactly 3:10 in the morning, my phone erupted with alerts. Someone was at my front door. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding, and checked the security camera feed. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was my father, accompanied by a man with a locksmith's tool bag, attempting to pick my newly changed locks. For a moment, I was too stunned to react. The audacity, the sheer disregard for boundaries and law, was breathtaking. My father truly believed he was above consequences, that rules simply didn't apply to him when it came to getting his way. With shaking hands, I called 911 for the second time in 24 hours. 911. What's your emergency? There's someone trying to break into my house right now. I can see them on my security camera. It's my father, who was arrested for trespassing earlier today, and he has someone with him who appears to be a locksmith. Are you in a safe location? Yes. I'm locked in my bedroom upstairs. Officers are being dispatched. Please stay on the line. I watched through the camera as my father impatiently paced while the locksmith worked on my door. The locksmith seemed nervous, continually looking over his shoulder as if he knew what they were doing wasn't right. Almost got it, I heard the locksmith say through the camera's audio. But sir, you're sure this is your house? Because if it's not, of course it's my house, my father lied smoothly. I just lost my keys and my son inside is a heavy sleeper. I need to check on him. The betrayal cut deep. Not only was he attempting to break in, but he was also dragging an innocent locksmith into his criminal behavior through deception. The police arrived with remarkable speed, lights flashing but sirens off. I watched through the camera as 2 officers approached my father and the locksmith from behind, catching them completely by surprise. Gentlemen, step away from the door and place your hands where I can see them, one officer commanded. The locksmith immediately complied, dropping his tools and raising his hands. My father, incredibly, tried to brazen it out. Officer, thank goodness you're here. I was just trying to get into my house to check on my son. Sir, is this your residence? The officer asked. Well, it's my son's, but is your name on the deed or rental agreement? No, but I'm his father. Sir, we received reports of a break-in attempt at this address. The homeowner has identified you as the perpetrator and indicated you were arrested for trespassing at this same property earlier today. Is that correct? My father's expression changed as he realized he couldn't talk his way out of this one. This is a family matter, he insisted. You're wasting police resources on a misunderstanding. Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for attempted breaking and entering, as well as violation of your release conditions from the earlier trespassing charge. As they handcuffed my father for the second time in 24 hours, the locksmith was frantically explaining that he had been called for an emergency lockout and had no idea he was participating in a crime. The officers separated him from my father for questioning. I watched it all unfold on my phone screen, a surreal movie starring my own father as the villain. When the officers called to confirm that I wanted to press charges, I didn't hesitate this time. "Yes," I said firmly, "and I want a restraining order." The days following my father's second arrest were chaotic. Family members I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my cruelty and selfishness. My phone became a battleground, with text messages and voicemails divided into two camps, those condemning me for having my father arrested, and those quietly supporting my right to set boundaries. My Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, called to berate me for tearing the family apart over a spare bedroom. My cousin Tyler sent a text saying, "Finally, someone stood up to Uncle Harold. About time." My mother, who had remained largely distant since the divorce, surprised me with a supportive email. "I'm proud of you for doing what I never could, standing your ground with him." Meanwhile, my father's legal situation had become significantly more complicated. The second arrest violated the conditions of his release from the first charge, and the attempted breaking and entering was a more serious offense. His longtime friend Judge Stevenson had recused himself from the case due to their personal connection, and the judge assigned to the case was known for being strict about repeat offenders. On the fourth day after the second arrest, I received an unexpected visitor. Marcus appeared at my door, looking haggard and angry. I almost didn't answer, but decided it was better to face him directly than allow tensions to fester further. "Can I come in?" he asked stiffly when I opened the door. I stepped aside, allowing him into the house he had expected his wife to occupy. He glanced around, taking in the security cameras I'd installed, before turning to face me. "Dad's facing jail time because of you," he said without preamble. "Actual jail time, Irving. Is that what you wanted?" "I wanted him to respect my boundaries," I replied calmly. "Everything that's happened has been a consequence of his choices, not mine." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Right. Because calling the cops on your own father is totally normal behavior. Is breaking into your son's house at 3 a.m. normal behavior?" I countered. "He was desperate. You left him no choice." I stared at my brother, truly seeing him for perhaps the first time. There are always choices, Marcus. He could have respected my decision. He could have helped Emma find another place to stay. He could have offered your family his own guest room. Instead, he chose to violate my home and my trust, twice. Marcus paced the living room, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "You don't understand what we're going through. Emma's pregnancy has been difficult. I've been struggling to find work. We're drowning in debt. Dad was just trying to help us. By forcing me to house you without my consent? That's not help, Marcus. That's control. So what were we supposed to do? Live on the street? Why aren't you staying with Dad and Diane?" I asked, the question that had been bothering me from the beginning. They have a 4-bedroom house with only 2 people living in it. Why was I the designated solution? Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. "Diane's mother is moving in with them next month. She's having hip surgery and needs care during recovery. And Dad couldn't postpone that to help his son and daughter-in-law in crisis?" I pressed. "Or offer you their guest room temporarily until her mother arrives. That would have been a month of breathing room to find something else." My brother's silence was telling. There was something he wasn't saying. "What's really going on, Marcus?" I demanded. Why was Dad so insistent that Emma had to stay with me specifically? Marcus sank onto my couch, suddenly looking defeated. "I messed up, Irving. Really messed up." I sat across from him, waiting. "I didn't just lose my job," he finally admitted. "I was fired for stealing from the company." This was news to me. "What? Why would you do that?" He couldn't look at me as he confessed. "I've been gambling. Online at first, then at the casino. I thought I could win enough to surprise Emma with a down payment on a house before the baby came. Instead, I lost everything. Our savings, maxed out credit cards. When that wasn't enough, I started skimming from the client accounts at work. I was speechless. My brother, who I'd always seen as the responsible one, the one who played by the rules, had a gambling addiction severe enough to risk his career and freedom. Dad found out when I was fired," Marcus continued. He paid back what I took to keep the company from pressing charges, but he was furious. Said I'd disgraced the family name. Said I needed to be supervised like a child. Things were starting to make sense. So this wasn't about helping you and Emma at all, I realized. This was about punishment. Marcus nodded miserably. He said I couldn't be trusted to manage a household anymore, that Emma and the baby needed stability that I couldn't provide. He's making us sell our car to repay him, which means we'd need to live somewhere with good public transportation. Like my neighborhood, I finished. He wanted Emma here so he could check on her regularly, and so you could report to him about my comings and goings. He doesn't trust me to be around our own money right now. The full picture was finally clear. My father hadn't been acting out of generosity or family duty. This had been another control mechanism, a way to punish Marcus while keeping his pregnant wife and unborn grandchild under surveillance. And I was meant to be the unwitting warden in this plan. Why didn't you tell me any of this? I asked. I'm your brother. I would have helped if I'd known the real situation. Dad said we shouldn't burden you with our problems, that you were too busy with your own life to care about family. He said he'd handle everything. Of course he did. My father had always excelled at driving wedges between people, at controlling the narrative to suit his purposes. He had deliberately kept Marcus and me from communicating directly, ensuring we remained isolated from each other, while he controlled the flow of information. Our conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. I checked the security camera and was surprised to see Emma standing on my porch, looking nervous. I let her in, noting how she relaxed slightly upon seeing Marcus. I'm sorry to intrude, she said quietly, but I needed to talk to you both. Emma sat beside Marcus on the couch, one hand unconsciously rubbing her pregnant belly as she gathered her thoughts. I want you to know how sorry I am for my part in all this, she began. I should never have agreed to your father's plan, especially when he said we shouldn't call you first to confirm, Irving. That should have been a red flag. I nodded, appreciating her honesty. But there's something else you should know, she continued, glancing at Marcus. Harold has been pressuring me in ways that make me uncomfortable. He calls multiple times a day to check where I am, who I'm with. He's been suggesting that after the baby comes, I should consider staying with him and Diane permanently for the baby's sake, while Marcus gets his act together. Marcus looked stunned. What? When did this start? About 2 weeks ago, after he paid back your company, Emma replied. At first I thought he was just being protective because of the baby, but it's become controlling. Yesterday he said, if we can't live with Irving, he's going to petition for grandparents' rights to ensure he has regular access to the baby. He can't do that, I protested. Actually, he's been researching it, Emma said. He showed me the statute in our state. And with Marcus's gambling and job situation, he thinks he has a case for providing a more stable environment for the baby. Marcus looked devastated. He's trying to take our child? Not take, Emma clarified, but control access. He's becoming obsessed with the idea that he needs to guide the next generation because we've all disappointed him so much. As this revelation settled over us, I remembered something Diane had mentioned about a folder in my father's desk. I pulled out my phone and showed Marcus and Emma the security footage from the night my father tried to break in with the locksmith. Look at what he's carrying, I pointed out. There, in my father's hand, was a folder of papers. Those look like legal documents, Marcus observed. Diane told me he's been meeting with his lawyer regularly, I said. What if this wasn't just about moving Emma in? What if he was planning to establish some kind of residency claim, or document that she was living here with my permission to use in some legal proceeding? We looked at each other as the full extent of my father's manipulation began to dawn on us. This wasn't just about control anymore. This was about creating a legal paper trail for something much bigger. We need to see what was in that folder, I said grimly. I contacted my lawyer friend, who agreed to help us access the documents that had been collected as evidence when my father was arrested. What we discovered confirmed our worst fears. My father had drafted a lease agreement with my forged signature, giving Emma and Marcus legal right to occupy my home for a nominal fee. He had also prepared guardianship papers that would grant him significant legal authority over their unborn child in case of any parental instability. The three of us sat in stunned silence as the magnitude of what we'd narrowly avoided sank in. My father hadn't just been trying to move Emma into my house. He had been orchestrating a complex legal trap designed to give him control over multiple aspects of our lives. "I can't believe he would go this far," Marcus whispered, holding Emma's hand tightly. But I could believe it. This was merely the logical extension of the control my father had exerted throughout our lives, now threatened by Marcus's mistakes and my independence. "We need to end this cycle," I said finally. "All of us, or he'll never stop trying to control our lives." For the first time in years, perhaps ever, Marcus and I were truly united, and with Emma's support, we began to formulate a plan to break free from our father's manipulation once and for all. The next few weeks were transformative for all of us. With my father temporarily out of the picture due to his legal troubles, we had space to implement our plan without his interference. My first priority was ensuring Emma had suitable housing for the remainder of her pregnancy. Rather than a temporary hotel, I helped her find a one-bedroom apartment in a building specifically for expectant mothers and new parents. The rent was subsidized by a local nonprofit, making it affordable even on a tight budget. The building had security, shared laundry facilities, and a nurse who checked in weekly with residents, perfect for Emma's situation. For Marcus, the journey was more complicated. He finally admitted he had a gambling addiction and agreed to seek help. I accompanied him to his first Gamblers Anonymous meeting, sitting in the back as moral support while he shared his story with strangers. It was the first time I'd seen my brother take genuine responsibility for his actions, without deflecting blame or making excuses. "I never realized how much I was trying to win Dad's approval through money," he confessed to me afterward. "I thought if I could just show him I was financially successful, he'd finally respect me as an adult." Marcus also agreed to financial counseling and found a job at a local supermarket. The position was far below his qualifications, but it came with health benefits that would help with the baby's medical costs and managers who were willing to work around his treatment schedule. Most importantly, it was honest work that kept him busy and away from gambling triggers. When the day of my father's court appearance arrived, I made the difficult decision to attend, not to support him, but to show the court that this wasn't a simple family misunderstanding as his lawyer was attempting to portray. The courtroom was tense. My father, dressed impeccably in a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly salary, barely glanced at me as I entered. His lawyer had been pushing for all charges to be dropped, arguing that this was a family matter that got out of hand and that no real harm was done. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement, I stood and spoke clearly. "Your Honor, what my father did goes beyond a simple misunderstanding. He deliberately violated my boundaries, attempted to establish unauthorized tenancy in my home, forged my signature on legal documents, and tried to break into my house in the middle of the night. This pattern of behavior represents a fundamental disrespect for my autonomy as an adult and as a homeowner. While I don't wish to see my father incarcerated, I do believe there must be consequences for his actions and legal protections to prevent future violations." The judge considered my words carefully before delivering his ruling. My father was sentenced to 2 years probation, mandatory counseling, community service, and a restraining order, preventing him from coming within 500 feet of my property. Most importantly, the judge made it clear that any violation would result in jail time, no exceptions. As we left the courtroom, my father finally approached me, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. "You've destroyed this family," he said quietly. "I hope you're satisfied." I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in my adult life. Not as the towering authority figure from my childhood, but as a flawed man whose need for control had alienated everyone around him. "I didn't destroy anything, Dad," I replied evenly. "I just refused to let you control my life anymore. There's a difference between helping family and manipulating them. I hope someday you learn what that difference is." I walked away then, leaving him standing alone in the courthouse hallway. It wasn't a triumphant moment, but a necessary one. For both of us. In the months that followed, our family underwent a transformation that would have seemed impossible before. Diane, emboldened by the changes she witnessed, began setting her own boundaries with my father. She enrolled in art classes she'd always wanted to take and started spending more time with her friends and family, independent of Harold. Marcus completed an intensive outpatient program for his gambling addiction and continued attending GA meetings 3 times a week. He was promoted to department manager at the supermarket and had been completely transparent with Emma about their finances, giving her access to all accounts and agreeing to a strict budget. And Emma, strong and resilient Emma, gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named Jordan. I was there at the hospital, the proud uncle holding his tiny nephew for the first time. As I looked down at his perfect little face, I made a silent promise that the cycles of control and manipulation that had defined our family would end with our generation. 3 months after Jordan was born, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I purchased a small 2-bedroom house just 2 blocks from my own and offered it to Marcus and Emma at a reduced rent they could afford, close enough to be supportive, but separate enough to maintain healthy boundaries. "Why would you do this after everything that happened?" Marcus asked when I showed him the house. "Because helping family doesn't mean controlling them," I explained. "It means supporting them while respecting their independence." Dad never understood that distinction. As for my father, the journey to redemption was slower and more uncertain. The mandatory counseling seemed to be having some effect. At Jordan's baptism, which Harold was permitted to attend with prior arrangement, he approached me with uncharacteristic humility. "I've been thinking about what you said at the courthouse," he admitted, "about the difference between helping and controlling. My therapist says I've been using money and resources as tools of manipulation my entire life." "That sounds accurate," I agreed, not making it easier for him. "I want to do better," he said simply. "I don't expect forgiveness or trust right away, but I want to try to be different, for Jordan's sake, if nothing else." It was a small step, but a significant one. Time would tell if it represented genuine change or another manipulation tactic. Either way, I was no longer vulnerable to his influence the way I once had been. My own healing journey involved therapy as well. I needed to understand why I had allowed my father's controlling behavior to continue unchallenged for so long, and how to build healthier relationships moving forward. I joined a support group for adult children of controlling parents, where I met others with similar experiences. For the first time, I didn't feel alone or crazy for struggling with family dynamics others seemed to navigate easily. 1 year after the incident that changed everything, our family gathered for Jordan's first birthday. It was cautious but cordial, with clearly defined boundaries that everyone respected. My father brought a gift but didn't overstep. Marcus stayed sober and present. Emma seemed genuinely happy in a way I hadn't seen before. As I watched Jordan toddle around the yard, laughing and exploring with the unfettered joy only a 1-year-old can possess, I reflected on the profound lesson this ordeal had taught me. True love does not seek to control. It respects boundaries, acknowledges autonomy, and supports growth rather than demanding compliance. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential. For without them, relationships become breeding grounds for resentment rather than connection. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is say no to someone who believes they have the right to override your decisions. And sometimes, the hardest boundaries to set are with the people who have known us the longest, who believe their role in our lives grants them special exemption from the respect they would show a stranger. As Jordan toddled over to me, arms raised in the universal request to be picked up, I scooped him into my arms and made another silent promise, that he would grow up in a family where his boundaries were respected, where love didn't come with strings attached, where being related didn't mean surrendering autonomy, because that's what family should really be about. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who thought they were entitled to override your decisions? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember that setting boundaries isn't just about saying no to others. It's about saying yes to yourself and your own well-being. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength in your own boundary-setting journey.